In this tutorial series, we're going to build a game that looks like this. The main things we'll learn in this series are building a world like this based on a simple PNG, optimizing performance by merging meshes, creating lighting, updating a navmesh during runtime. The first thing we're going to do is to add all the assets to the project. You can figure out how to acquire the assets in the description below, and if you're a patron, you can of course go to the Patreon page and download all of them. So let's get started by adding all the assets to the project. To get the assets into the project, we simply just double click the Unity package, and then we just say import all. When you've added the asset package, you'll notice you have a image folder, materials folder, models folder, and a prefab folder. The first thing I would like to do is to add a skybox to the game that looks a little more cartoonish. So if you go to materials, you'll see that there's a skybox material, and you can simply just grab that and drag it into our scene. With that done, we will have to create our scripts. The next step is to create all the scripts. I think it's easier for us if we just create the scripts now and then we add the code to the scripts later when we need it. So let's do that. So let's create a new folder by clicking assets, right click, create a folder and call it scripts. So what we would like to be able to do is to click a button in our inspector to generate a world here. That's why we're going to create a new folder called world generation. This folder will contain all the scripts we need to generate our world. As I said before, we need to be able to push a button in our inspector, so we're going to make a custom inspector, and this script is going to be called map builder editor. And we're also going to have a script that is going to run those buttons when the custom editor is running. Let's make a new script called map builder script. So these two belong together basically. So the editor is going to create buttons. This one is going to have the actual code that we need to execute something for generating the world. And then we are going to create a new script also called map element. And then we are also going to have a new script called configuration container. We need to be able to build our world before we run our game. And to do that, we need to create a custom inspector with a couple of buttons that will allow us to create the world and clear the world. So the next thing we're going to do is to add in that custom inspector so that we can create our own world based on the PNG. Let's start by creating our custom inspector. So we're going to open our map editor script here. And in here, we are going to make sure that this one is a custom editor. So we're going to go to the top of the script and make these tags, writing custom editor. And if you right click on custom editor and say quick actions, it'll ask you to implement using Unity editor here. So we can use this custom editor. And then we're going to say, well, what kind of map is, not map, sorry, what kind of script is this one going to be working with basically? Type of, what kind of script is it? It's a map builder script. And then we are going to end that. So then we are going to make sure that this one doesn't inherit from mono behavior, but from the editor, like that. And then we're going to remove start and update. We're going to say public override. We're going to override the onInspector GUI. Oh, override void onInspector GUI. And we don't need to call the base. So this is just us telling us, well, the inspector is already rendered, but we want to do something else on top of it, basically. So we are going to draw the default inspector. So we're going to draw whatever Unity wants to draw as default, and then we're going to put our own stuff on top of it, for example, some buttons. So we're going to say map builder script, my script, and then we are going to say target. So the target is the object we are trying to use here, and that's the map builder script. So we need to cast it to a map builder script. There we go. So now we have this script, we have access to it, and that means we can actually go to our map builder script. Let's right click on map builder script, go to definition, and let's just make a pop-off method here, void generate map, and let's make a pop void clear. So generate map is going to create the whole map for us, and clear is going to remove it again if we don't want that map. And then we're going to build them or call those methods. So if our GUI layout dot button, let's call that button build map. This is actually just the text that's going to be on the button. You can write whatever you want here. And then if GUI layout dot button clear. And here we're going to say my script dot generate map. And down here we're going to say my script dot clear. There we go. So this is our custom inspector. So let's save this, go back, and then we can make a new empty game object, call it world generator or something like that. And then we take our map builder script and we just drag it onto here, and you'll see that we have a build map method and a clear method. And if we would go to our script here and write debug.log, for example, generate map, you'll see that it would write that in the debug, what's called the console here. If we do that and build, it says generate map, as you can see. So now we know that this button and this should both be working because we set them up in the same manner. And you know what? Let's actually say that this world generator is called map builder, because that's what the script is called. So yeah, let's just keep the same names. Now we're going to create one of the more complicated scripts, and that is our configuration container. I know that it might sound a bit weird now, but we actually need the configuration container to contain tiles in each category. For example, we need a category for tiles on the ground, and we also need another category for having trees and bushes and so on. So let's get started by filling in this configuration container. So as I showed you before, we're going to build this world in layers. So we're going to start by building the ground, and then the grass on top of it, and then flowers and trees on top of that, and so on if we need more. So we're going to make sure that we can set up those layers over here in the inspector. And to do that, we have to add something to our configuration container, because the configuration container is going to be an array here, and each configuration container is basically going to be a, what should I call, a layer. So this might seem very confusing right now, but let's start to write the code and see if we understand better when we do that. So let's see here, we have the configuration container. So here we are going to make a private string name, and we need that because we need to be able to set a name in the inspector. The configuration container is not going to inherit from mono behavior. That's very important. It's not going to be a game object. We're simply going to use it on our inspector. And then we're going to do this system.serializable. What else do we need? We need a private transform or parent. So that is the game object that all the instantiated objects from this configuration container is going to go on, because we don't want to fill up our inspector here, our hierarchy with lots of game objects, right? We want to put them under other parent objects. So if I would do like this and call ground, then all the ground objects will go as a child of this ground object. And that's why we're creating this parent here. So we can see, well, ground is this parent's, it's called, is the parent for everything this configuration container is going to create. So we're also going to serialize this. And we're also going to serialize the name here. And we're going to remove start and update. Okay, so before we write too much code, let's actually use this configuration container so we can see why we're creating it. So let's jump over to our map builder script, we can actually close the editor because we don't need that. And inside our map builder script, we can start writing some code for setting this up. So we're going to make a private configuration container. Call it configuration containers, like that, and we're going to serialize it like that and save. When we've done that, we can go and check our map builder, and then the script just needs to update. And you'll see we have this drop down now called configuration containers. So if we would start creating our map, we would open up this drop down, click the little plus. You can see we have something called element 0. Well, that's why I added the name, because element 0 to whatever number is not very easy to remember. So let's put the name, and we can call this one ground. And you'll see that when we collapse this, we have ground now. And then we need to set the parent. Well, the parent that this configuration container, when it creates every single object, it needs to put them under this one. And we can actually take the map builder at the ground and put it as a child of map builder, so we can collapse our world, so we don't have our inspector filled up with every single layer. Okay, so those are two fields. Let's jump back to our configuration container. And let's see what else we need. We need some prefabs. So let's make a private map element called prefab. So our prefabs are going to be all the objects that this layer needs to spawn: water, ground, grass, and all those things, right? Or dirt, actually. This layer is going to spawn in our case. And we're also going to serialize this. And then we need to understand where we need to put these, or what we need to instantiate. And if you go into the images folder, because this is exactly what we're going to do, we're going to open up map, and you can see if I open this one up, it's very small. We're going to look at this PNG, and based on the colors on this, we're going to generate our map. So you could go in and change this PNG to something else, and the map would look different. So we can see here, we have our dark grass or light grass, and there's a hole here for water and some sand around here. And then we have the ground. You'll see that this is the ground we're going to create. We're going to make a line around the map, and then we're going to make the sand, and we're also going to make some water. So this is the ground layer. So we need to tell this configuration container what to read from. What does it need to read to be able to generate this? Well, that's why we are creating a private texture 2D map data and serializing. With that created, we can go back here. Let's see if it's saved here. It just needs to update. And then we can tell it that the map data this one needs to use is called ground. So it's going to read that and create a map based on that. And that's because I'm doing it in different layers. Basically, we could put everything in one, but that makes it a bit harder later when we need to optimize stuff. So that's why I put it in different layers. What else do we have here? We need to be able to access some of these from the outside. So prefabs needs to be a property. You can do that by right-clicking quick actions and say encapsulate field. Or you can click here, and in my what is it called, the Visual Studio, it's Control-R-E, and then it does this for me. And it's the same as right-clicking, saying quick actions and encapsulate field, like this. And what else? We need the map data, so we can access it from others. And basically, I just want to make this private set. Before set, I'm just going to write private, so that we can't change it by mistake from another class. We don't want to ruin this. We also need a dictionary of all the map elements. So let's make a property. You can write a property fast by writing prop and tab 2 times. And then we're going to say dictionary. If you can't do that, you can just write it by hand. It's the same result. String map element. And we're going to call this one map elements. We're just going to instantiate this dictionary here. So what is a dictionary? It's just another type of list where it's easier to look up because it uses hash value, so it's a hash set. And I'm not going to go into details about that. You can try to Google and read about it. Basically, we can just tell this one, I want sand, and then it's going to return the sand. So basically, somewhere in your code, you can write map elements. Let's say that this is the one, and then write sand like this, and then it's going to return you the tile with sand, for example. That's why I'm using this. Okay, so that's actually our configuration container for now. I know maybe it doesn't make 100% sense, but I'm pretty sure it will when we start using it. So we can actually close this one down because we don't need it right now. Now that we've created our configuration container, we can create our map elements. Our map elements are the link between our PNG file and our actual game. So the map element will contain information about which color the tile is on the PNG map and what kind of prefab we need to spawn in our game world based on that color. So let's get started on creating that map element so we can get closer to actually creating our map. We just created a field in here in our configuration container called map elements and prefabs, and right now this map element is not populated with any code, so we need to go to that by right clicking, go to definition, open up the map element. We also need to make sure it doesn't inherit from mono behavior, and then we say system.serialize field, so yeah, there we go. We need to delete update and start and make a private string again, name as before, and we're also going to serialize this field here. And then we are going to make a private game object like this called game object. And then we are also going to make a private color 32 called color. So the game objects are the prefabs that we actually need. And the color is the color that we see on the image, right? So if we open this up, all these images are made up of different colors, of course. So this color we are just writing the field for is going to check for this or this or this color or whatever. So that's why we need to put a color in here. And then we need a mesh renderer. So why do we need that? Well, I need the mesh renderer to figure out how big the tile is. And when we know how big the tile is, we know where to place the next one. So let's say that we in our game, let's take a block here. Let's say we take some dirt, for example. We take some dirt here, and we need to know where to place the next one. So we need the size of this one to know where exactly we need to place this one to make sure that it's right next to the other one, kind of like this, roughly. So that's why we need the mesh render. We can use that to figure out the size. We're just going to remember, look at this. It looks kind of blue, everything here. And that's because of the skybox. As I also said earlier, we are going to fix the lighting. We just can't do it in one video, everything. So later we're going to fix the lighting so it looks more cartoonish as it did in the intro. So let's see here, mesh render. We also need to serialize that. Okay, so right now we can't access these from outside, so we need to make properties for the color, the game objects, and the mesh render. And actually this one is an array, so let's put an S here so it's game objects. Let's just make properties for all these, Control RE, or write it yourself, or right click, or quick actions. And that's actually what we need in our map elements for now, so you can save that and close it down. Now that we've created our map elements, we have the link that we need to create a game world based on our PNG maps. However, we haven't told our map elements yet which kind of color they need to match with which kind of prefab. So that's exactly what we're going to do now. We're going to take the colors from our PNG map and match each color with a prefab from our game. Now that we have done creating the map element class, we can start populating this array out here in the configuration container. So we need to add 3 different what's called tiles or blocks to it. The first one would be dirt or ground, or what we want to call it. It's dirt, and then we can click the plus to add another one, and let's call that one sand. And then let's add the last one and call that water. We need the right colors for this, and the colors are actually the same colors as there is on this map here, right? So these are the colors that we're going to use there, and it's actually rather this one. So we're going to use the yellow, the blue, and the brown to figure out where these things are going to be. So let's click the map builder again. So the colors, I have them here, the hex code off screen. Just gonna copy that and put that in here, right there, and you can also find them in the description below the video. And there, we're going to add this one here, and it's very important that you set the alpha value to 255 as well. And here we also have one, and there we go, and the alpha value to 255. Then we are going to add some game objects. So third, well, we need to add a block. So let's go to prefabs, blocks, block dirt. This is the one that looks like this. And again, don't mind that it's a bit blue out here. We're going to take block dirt and add it, not as the mesh, also as the mesh render actually, but here as element 0. We're also going to use that one as mesh render because that's the size of it. Then we're going to take the one called block sand and add here, and also block sand and add to the mesh render. And then water, I'm going to take this one and put it here, and then take water and add the mesh renderer. Okay, so now we've actually populated this configuration container with everything we need to be able to spawn our objects or our tiles based on this ground PNG map. So we're finally here. We are almost ready to build our world. The only thing we need to do now is to fill in the code that will be executed when we click our clear button and our build map button. So without further ado, let's get started on doing that. With that done, we only need to create the code for generating our map. The first thing we need to do is to run through or loop through our different layers here. Right now we only have a ground layer, but later we are going to have trees and so on. Instead of ground, we're going to have trees here and so on. But we don't need that right now, but we're going to write the code so it simply just works when we add other layers. So to do that, we need to run through this configuration container array. Let's go to generate map, and in here we are gonna say for, make it for each loop, and we're going to run through our configuration containers length because we need to run through all of them, all layers. This could also be named layers basically. And then for each of those map elements that is in that configuration container, which means we're going to run through each of these map elements, dirt, sand, water, in that current container. So right now we are looping through this, and now we are trying to loop through all these. And we are simply going to say map element, let's call it map element, in our tile container, or not tile, sorry, configuration containers, position I dot prefabs. So we're running through all the prefab, that's sand, dirt, and so on. Then we say tile map element, or actually I want to go configuration containers, position I dot map elements dot add map element dot color to string map element. So what am I doing here? Well, I'm taking each of these tiles here and adding them to a dictionary, so I can write dirt in my code and get this block of dirt returned, right? That's what I'm doing. I'm looping through this just so I have easier access to it, so I don't have to look through all of this every time I need to get a specific tile. Imagine you need to make 1,000 dirt tiles, right? Then it's easier just to get dictionary and access it right away. So that's why we are adding it to the configuration containers map elements. Then we need the width and height of our PNG map, because we need to know how many pixels we need to run through and how many tiles we need to place in our world. And we need to make an integer called height. And how do we get the height? It's simply just the configuration containers position 0 dot map data dot height. And we need to do the same for the width. Just copy paste this one and rename this one to width. So why am I taking position 0? Well, because all my maps are the same height, which means if I go to Unity here, you'll see all these have the same width and height. Ground is the same as map, as plants, as trees. One thing I didn't show before that's also very important, both ground, map, plants, and trees, it's very important that they have this read-write enabled. If it's not read-write enabled, we can't read the map and we can't place our tiles, and then the console will give us an error and telling us that we need to enable read-write. So I did it in my asset package. If you're using your own assets, then make sure to enable read-write and put the texture type to sprite 2D and UI. Okay, so now we have position 0 and 0 width and height. So what do we need to do now? We need to use that to run through our whole PNG map and place each tile based on the color. And that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to make a for loop that runs as far as our configuration containers dot length. And actually, I'm going to rename this. Instead of configuration containers, just call it layers. It makes more sense, right? It's all our layers. So we have our layers dot length, and then we need to run through each pixel on each PNG map, and that's X and Y. So we need to make a for loop where we use X width, and we need to make another for loop where we use Y as height. So as long as X is less than width and as long as Y is less than height, then we are still running through our PNG map. So we need to get the specific color we have on the tile. So we look at each tile and get the color to see if we need to place something. So make a color 32 called C, and we get that from the layers position I map data dot get pixel. How do we get the pixel? Well, X comma Y. So that gets the pixel at a specific position, right? So in this case, we could take any pixel on the map. Then we need to create our own map element. Just gonna create that for reference. And then we say layers position I map elements try get value C to string out map element. This one right there. So try get value tries to get something from the dictionary, and if it doesn't exist, it's not going to throw an error. If we try to get something from the dictionary without try get value, we might get a null reference exception and crash the game. That's why we're using try get value. And then we take the color to string, because we are looking through a dictionary that has a key as a string and a value as a map element. So for example, it could look like, I don't know, we are looking through the dictionary, we are trying to get red or something, and then it returns the map element that is red, if that's the case, or the tile that is red. Okay, so we try to get a specific value on a specific pixel. If that's successful, we say if map element isn't null. So if it isn't null, this one, then we manage to find the pixel or the on the specific color on that specific position. Then we say index 0. So and then we say if our map element dot game objects dot length is more than 1, then we do something random here. And that's for later. We just add the code because later we need to be able to pick between a random plant, for example, a flower or grass or something else, well, this code is going to be written here for placing a random plant. But just keep that if statement for now. What we actually need to do is to say game object yo equals instantiate. What do we need to instantiate? We need to instantiate the map element, the game objects index, and that's 0 right now. And we're preparing for being able to do more stuff later. That's why I write this variable instead of just writing 0 here. And who's the parent? The parent is tile layer dot I dot parent. We can actually jump out in Unity and test this if we want to. Right now, if we click the map builder and build map, you'll see that it instantiates all the blocks. However, they're placed on top of each other because we're not placing them correctly yet. We're simply just putting them in the game without setting them in the right position. And you'll notice if we click the button again, let's see here, the build map, we'll get an error saying that the key has already been added to the dictionary, and that's because we're trying to add the same color multiple times. And that's what our clear method here is going to fix for us. So when we build the map, we should call clear no matter what. And it should clear our dictionary for us so we don't get this error. So let's actually just add the clear method real quick here. It's not that big. It's a couple of for loops. So we say for loop our layers dot length. So we run through all our layers, and while our layers y dot parent dot child count is more than 0. So as long as we have objects, because we're looking at this one, as long as it has children like this, well, then we need to clear. So we say for x, and we need to say layer I dot parent dot child count. So as long as we run through all, as long as our parent has children, we try to delete them by doing destroy immediate layer I dot parent dot get child x. So we run through each child alone and delete. So why are we doing it like this? Well, we're doing this stuff in the editor, and just to make sure that everything works as intended, we are using destroy immediate because it destroys the object immediately. If you use normal destroy, it will ask you to use destroy immediately, even though it says here destroy the object immediately. You're strongly recommended to use destroy. Well, when we are in the editor and we're not playing our game, we should use destroy immediate. So this one, it didn't need to be called X, we could also rename it to J or something, so it's nothing to do with that. Yes, so what we're doing here is actually we take the parent. As long as this parent has children, we loop through all the children, delete them one by one. But that's not enough. We also need to clear our dictionary. We do that by saying for loop here and layers dot length layers I map elements dot clear. So we clear the map elements on each layer so that we can add them again when we try to build. Okay, let's save that. So right now, if we go here, you'll see it updates the scripts. And if I go to scene and I select my map builder and click the clear button, it will clear it and there are no more objects. And I can click build again to build them without an error. I think, let's see here if this one was built before. I think it was clear build. Yeah. So basically we also need to call clear when we build a map so we don't get this error here, right? So we can go here and in the beginning of generate map, we simply call clear. And there we have it. So now we can clear and generate the map. Let's just try that. Now we shouldn't get an error if we click build map, even though there's stuff here. Just clear and build. It'll just build on top of itself, as you can see. Now we need to place them correctly. So how do we do that? Well, that's simple. We need to go here after we have instantiated the object. We will have to set the transform position, and we should actually do that just below here. Say game object to transform the position, new vector 3, map element. Let's take this one. That mesh renderer, that bounce, that size, that x multiplied by x, and the y position is going to be 0. We're not going to move it up or down. And the z position is going to be map element, that mesh renderer, the bounce, that size, that x again, and multiplied by y. So we're just going to use the x size because that's the width on the block, and all my blocks has the same size, so I'm just going to do this. So if we save that and jump back to Unity, we'll go to map and movement of truth. Let's try to build, and there we go. So now we're actually building our ground, as you can see here. So if we look at this, we have our water, our sand around the water. There's no top of it yet. We're going to add that. And we have our ground all around the map here. And you can see that this reassembles exactly what we look at here. It's very hard to see. We have all the edge around here, and we have this one and the water. But as you can see, we don't have tops on it. We're going to add that layer in the next video. So that is what I wanted to do in this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Before we end this video, I would like to take a moment to say thanks to all my patrons, because I wouldn't be able to do this without you. So thank you so much for all your support. I would also like to say thanks to Scott for their tier 4 sub this month, and special thanks to James Bond for their tier 5 sub again this month.